So, where we left off was about this construction of the Constitution. We had 55 people get together, yay, put them together, woo, Virginia, New Jersey, all these random statements, and somehow, some way, we get like a magical government, right? So everything's great, everything's peachy, we now have a government, everything's gonna function, and we're gonna do wonders as the United States, right? Wrong. If you honestly think you can put all that together and make everybody agree about it, you're hallucinating. Right. So here is the big issue. Anytime that change takes place, look back to last week, for example. Anytime change takes place, there's always going to be multiple perspectives and different ideas, and they're going to clash together, right? That's when we find debates, not like, will you shut up, man? Not debates, more like, have you considered this perspective? Debates. There's a big difference. Today, we're going to focus on two major ideas that result in probably one of the biggest debates or debatable concepts inside the United States that still plays out to 2020. These ideas are the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist. And for some of those of you who enjoy Broadway, this one is for you. All right, so let's begin with the Federalist. The Federalists are led by this guy by the name of Alexander Hamilton. Yeah, that guy. Okay, so Alexander Hamilton was a Federalist. Now, he was kind of secret about it at first. He kind of tried to stay neutral. That didn't work, right? So here's the whole idea behind the Federalists. First of all, the Federalists were identified as the first actual political party in the United States. That's number one. All right, cool. Two, what did the Federalists really believe? Here was the concern about the Federalists. The Federalists firmly believed that we needed a strong central government, all right? And they needed the states to support the Constitution. And they wanted to make sure that the people, if we go a little bit deeper, the government was responsible for protecting the people. Go back to your philosophers, Rousseau, Montesquieu, Locke, Hobbes, right? They firmly adopted those ideas that it's the government's responsibility to bring about social welfare for the people. Social welfare really means this: protecting the people, protecting their right, giving them the ability to be okay with inside of society, right? Federalism, Federalist. That's the terminology we're going to use for now. So it really was all about the government needed to take care of its people. In turn, the people would give up some of their rights, if necessary, for the common good. So it wasn't about so much the individual as it was about people as a whole. I'm willing to give up some of my rights in order for the common good of society. That should fall directly into some of your philosophers. Go back to your notes, take a look, right? So that's the Federalists. Their big thing, government needs to support, needs power to be able to support the people. Cool. So in come the Anti-Federalist, right? Very creative on names. The Anti-Federalists opposed the Constitution. Like, they didn't like it. They said the Constitution gave the government way too much power, and it was going to imprison the people. They were so worried that the Constitution was going to give the national government so much power that eventually it was going to lead to very similar to how Great Britain was set up, and a lot of these guys are remembering the Revolutionary War. We don't want to give this much power to the national government. They will abuse it by default, and they will use it on us by default, right? Right. So, with that said, here's how this plays out. So these two groups, they bicker with each other, but it's like super petty and super sneaky. They do this by writing, right? Seriously, like they write it out. And what happens is, remember at this time, we have no electricity, aside from Benjamin Franklin getting struck by lightning. We don't have electricity, we don't have communication, we don't have telephones, we don't have internet, any of that stuff, right? We all know all they really got is, you're right, letters. And publications. Think back to Paul Revere. So what they would do is they would write these letters, pamphlets really, and they would publish them out to the public to read. The Federalists would publish theirs, and then the Anti-Federalists would publish theirs, and people would kind of get this campaign idea going back and forth on which side do I really want to side with, right? Am I a Federalist? Am I an Anti-Federalist? Now, the Anti-Federalists, they were really sneaky. They used pseudonyms. In other words, they didn't use their real names when they were publishing it. They used names like Brutus, Centennial, Federal Farmer, like bizarro names that really didn't distinguish who some of those people were. Now, what we do know is eventually some of the revolutionary heroes, such as Patrick Henry, would later come up saying they were an anti-federalist because, once again, they're so fearful of the government taking too much power. The Federalists, on the other hand, we already knew Alexander Hamilton was in there. James Madison was in there also. Revert back to the prior video. Madison was the whole idea with the three branches, really pulling that from Montesquieu, the philosopher. See how that's all linking together? Cool. So those are like two of the main like figureheads, right? So the question's this. We know what the problem is. What happens? Compromise. You're going to find out the United States government is laced historically with compromises. So we keep the Constitution. We give the national government that much power. We're like, yes, they got to have power. Look at the Articles of Confederation. It didn't work. So the Federalists win, right? Wrong. They don't. Really, nobody wins and nobody loses. Because here's what the Anti-Federalists get out of it. The Anti-Federalists are concerned the national government will rule with an iron fist over the people. So instead, what they end up creating is what we know today as the Bill of Rights. So we have this Constitution that lays out the three branches of government, right? Executive, judicial, and legislative, correct? Right. That's all about the government. But what about the people, the folks who vote to build that government? So inside the Constitution, they're given what's called the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights is exactly what it sounds like. These are the rights that are given to all citizens no matter what. So this is where you start to find your freedom of speech, your freedom of press, religion, petition, assemble, right? That whole thing, that's just the First Amendment. We have the right to bear arms as a Second Amendment. We go into the third one. You don't have to quarter troops, right? We talked about that from the Revolutionary War. That's in there. You have the right to a fair and speedy trial. You have the right to a trial by jury. All these different rights that sometimes we take for granted, honestly, this is where they really come into play. So to recap that a little bit, really what ends up happening is you have these two ideas, these two philosophies, really, of government in the United States, the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist. And while they compete with each other for the public people to see who really gets the approval on how the government should run, in the end, it's really a compromise. We get a little bit of both. We've got the government and the Constitution and the three branches, and the national government has all this power, yada, yada, yada. But at the same time, we also get the Bill of Rights, where it says, regardless of who you are, asterisk, regardless of who you are given these rights just because you are a citizen of the United States, and the government cannot take them away from you, which we will explore later in detail also. All right? So that's really like the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. It's fascinating because it's such a big movement. And really, I'll tell you a secret if you're watching the video this long into it. When we look at political parties today, the two big ones, one of those parties is really about social welfare, and it's about the government's responsibility to take care of its people and making sure the national government has pretty solid authority, right? The other party is much more oriented in leave the citizen alone, let them do what they want. We don't want a strong national government because they'll abuse the power over the people, right? Weird. Just saying, you might be looking at political parties today with a different scope in the sake of going, maybe there's a lot more to it than just a bunch of people yelling on the television screen. Maybe political parties of the modern day, maybe they trace back to the 1700s. Who knew? By the way, first president, George Washington, first and only independent to be president, hated political parties. Just a little tidbit. All right, that's all I got. Peace.